Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Shore. I'm Vice President of CPC Train Canada, and welcome to Project 2010. Learn to start a project off right. Your presenter today will be Greg Lutz. He's a senior instructor with CPC Train Canada out of our GTA Toronto office.
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, I'm Greg. I'll be your instructor for the next few minutes. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you through building a project. More specifically, I want to show you some of the quirks and little idiosyncrasies that project has, especially with the 2010 version. If any of you are familiar with the previous version, then you notice some really big changes in 2010. In fact, just starting a project, you might have noticed that it's actually quite difficult. I'm going to share out my desktop here, so I'm just going to move over to Microsoft Project so you can see my screen and see all the different things that I'm talking about. So this is the new Microsoft Project. Much like the rest of the suite, it has all the different tabs. Task, Resource, Project, View. The task area, the task ribbon, this is where you can change to different views. You get your calendar view, the Gantt chart, network diagram, etc. There's a couple of issues when you first open up the product in 2010. They've changed a few things, and some other stuff they haven't changed, so it's the same old that you're going to have to do. What I'm talking about is at the very, very bottom of my screen. All your new tasks are manually scheduled. That means that if you create any relationships between tasks, those relationships are not honored. If a task is delayed, if a task moves up, bumps down the timeline, shifts in any way, the rest of the tasks that it's linked to are not affected. So in other words, you don't get a true timeline, and you don't fully understand the effects of certain delays or the moving of certain work packages throughout the project. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is change your tasks. Down at the bottom where it says New Tasks, Manually Scheduled, you're going to want to switch that. You're going to want to switch it to Auto Scheduled. That way, the dates are automatically calculated by Microsoft Project. In English, it is going to respect all the different relationships that you have throughout the project so that when things are delayed or things are moved up, the result is shown. Tasks move up, back, forward. So, first thing I want to do, auto schedule. The next thing that you want to do is change your tracking Gantt. Your Gantt chart is showing you baseline information. So the table that you have in front of you shows you baseline information. The task name, the duration, my start time, my finish time, and a few other columns that I can fill out as well. When you're ready to track the project, you want to switch from a Gantt chart to a tracking Gantt. The problem with the tracking Gantt is, as you'll see, it's identical. In fact, this really isn't a tracking Gantt view. This is still entry. This is still baseline information that you're entering. How you know that is by heading to the View tab. Up top, you have a tab. It's called View. When I click on View, these are all the different things that I can change about my view. I can switch to different views, the Gantt, task usage, network diagram, my calendar. I have other views that I can take a look at, like team planner and resource usage. I can also sort, outline, and this is what I came in here for, tables. In a Gantt chart, a tracking Gantt, you don't want to be looking at an entry table. The table that you want to be looking at is called a tracking table. So underneath tables is tracking. If you click onto tracking, this will make a lot more sense when you're tracking the project and entering in actuals. In the previous screen, there was nothing that said actual. Here I have my actual start, my actual finish, my percentage complete, my physical percent complete, my actual duration is here too, the remaining, the actual cost, the actual work that was involved. These are your actuals. So by default, your tracking Gantt is not set up correctly. So you need to switch views, head to your tracking Gantt, and change the table. By default, the table for the tracking Gantt is an entry table. Nothing in the entry table has anything about actuals. Once I switch my table to the tracking table, now I see my actuals. That's one of the things that you do, or a couple of the things that you do, to set your project up so that you're starting off right. The next thing that you have to do is you've got to head to your Project tab. In the Project tab, there's two places that we need to change information. Project information and change working time. This needs to be done before you enter any information into the project timeline. If you enter information into the project timeline, entering different work packages, then you're going to have some issues when you go into project information and you start to schedule either your start time or your finish time for the project. You'll notice that certain tasks are not going to respect that timeline, and you'll have difficulty moving them. Same with changing the work time. If at any time you start to list out your different tasks, adding durations, well, you're going to have a tough time moving some of those tasks. And some of those tasks are going to have a tough time respecting the hours that you work at. So first things first. I got to head to project information and tell them exactly when I want the project finished. So I'll click on project information. My finish date is not lit up. It's grayed out and I can't get into it. That's because of this box, Schedule From. In Schedule From, it's showing me the project start date. If I click the pull down arrow, I want to change that to the project's finish date. So I've taken my scheduling from and I've changed it to my project finish date. The next thing that I want to do is pick the date. When I click the pull down arrow, what I should see is a calendar. I can navigate the calendar and find the date that we said we're going to have it finished by. We're going to build a house. So I'll switch to August, and we're going to have it finished by August 1st. You have a few other buttons, drop-downs, that you can play with as well. The current date, your status date, and the calendar. Most of the time in an organization, you're not allowed to change your computer's date. If you try and change the time and the date on your computer, most of the time you're locked out. It's also not a good idea to do that. It affects certain systems and can affect you accessing network drives or accessing the network at all, as well as the internet. So this allows me to change my current date to trick the software into thinking that it's not April 4th. It's some other date. This way I can go ahead in time, I can go back in time, and see where actual days lie. I can also go through a bit of a simulation, fast forward it 5-6 years from now, and be able to go through a project that is going to happen within 5 or 6 years. I'm not going to change my current date. I'll keep it as is. The status date is used for different reports. Certain reports have a status date that can be filled out. If the status date is not filled out, it'll use the current date instead. So this is not something that is mandatory. Your calendar, which we're going to change soon enough, you've got a 24-hour calendar, so that would be a project that just happens 24 hours straight. Anything can happen at any time. A night shift calendar, which means that only certain things, certain tasks actually happen at night. And then you've got your standard calendar, which basically assumes a regular workday. At some point, you're going to want to modify these calendars. You can also create your own calendars, but until you get really familiar with Project, I don't recommend that you create your own calendar. When you create your own calendar, that calendar needs to be inserted in several different spots throughout the program. If you don't know where those spots are, it's going to throw off your working times, as well as the time off, and as well as some of the graphics that you see. So not everything is going to show you what it should be showing you. So for now, stick with the calendars that are there. I'll choose standard. I've scheduled from my finish date. It's going to be finished August 1st. Pretty much happy with this screen, so I'll click OK. Any questions so far? All right. Let's keep going. Next thing that I want to do is change my work time. So I filled out the project information. Now I got to set my calendar. When you click on Change Working Time, this is my standard calendar that I'm working with. Any days that are grayed out are days that I'm not working. If you wish to change the working time is displayed on the right-hand side, and it's from 8 till 5. If you do wish to change the working time, then you're going to have to go to Work Weeks. That's a tab that's down below. Exceptions are generally used for vacations and holidays. It can also be used to extend the workday certain days. If I click on Work Weeks, this is my default work week. You can have multiple work weeks. So if hours change from week to week or from month to month, you could have multiple work weeks that sit in here. You pick a start time that the work week starts and an end time that this work week is finished. The following work week will be employed and it'll use those hours that you've set. I'm not actually going to have multiple work weeks. I just want to change the one that I have. So I'll click on Details. Now I need to set the work week. The work week is going to be from Monday to Friday. I can use the project's default times, or I can set these to non-working time. If I set Monday to Friday as non-working time, not much work is going to get done. So I need to set these to specific work times. To change the specific work times, you just have to click into the box. I know you're kind of missing that I bar, but that's okay. Don't worry. As soon as you type, it'll wipe out what's there. So I can say that we start at 6 o'clock in the AM, and we can go until, say, 10 o'clock AM. We'll take a bit of a break, so that means that we'll come back at 11 o'clock. That's still the AM. And we'll have them finish, say, around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So I'll put in 3 o'clock p.m. If you ever get an error message in there, most of the time, watch the AM and the PMs. Most of the time, that's where you've gone wrong. I could click on Saturday and make it a working day. I could click on Sunday and make it a working day as well. I'm not going to change any of that stuff. So instead, I'll click OK. This is the project's working time. This does not mean that all of your resources work those hours. It's just the time that the project's open. So if work could happen, say at 4 o'clock, then these are not the right hours. These are the hours that work could happen. It doesn't mean that these are the actual working hours. Each resource is going to have their own schedule and their own working hours. Now, if there are any exceptions, like vacations or days that we're shutting down, then I'll need to put different exceptions in there. For instance, I could have the 19th as an exception. The exception, we could call this safety training. I specify the 19th, and also finishes on the 19th. You know what, it's an exception day because it's underlined and bolded. If I click off to the side, you'll kind of see that it's used the blue. The issue is that it's non-working and it's using the blue, so it's kind of tough to see. But for sure, that's a non-working day. Lets me know on the right-hand side. Tells me what it's based on. As long as I'm happy with all this, I click OK. When I click OK, it has an effect on my calendar on the right-hand side. You might not exactly see it, not at this time scale. If you head to View, inside View, I'm allowed to zoom in. A little more than halfway through this toolbar is a button called Zoom. It has a magnifying glass. So I can zoom in. Now it shows me every 6 hours. I can zoom in again. Now I'm looking at every 2 hours. I can zoom in again. And now I'm looking at every 15 minutes. But if I take a look, and I take a look at my working hours, as you can see, I start at 6. We got the break at 10, right to 11. We pick up work again from 11, and we go to 3. I'll switch my time scale back, and I'll switch it to days. I'll use the pull-down arrow there to do that. So on a time scale, I'll choose days. That gets me back to the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I also need to change views. We're about to start the project now. You see, we've set the project information, I've changed the work time, and now I'm ready to brainstorm and think of all the different things that we have to do. So for that, I'll head back to Task, and I'll change it from a tracking Gantt to a Gantt chart. Remember, a Gantt chart is where you do all of your planning. In fact, you can create Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. You can have up to 11 different plans. So if something goes wrong, you can pull out Plan B and start on Plan B. All I have to do now is brainstorm and think of all the different things that I have to do. In this case, we're going to build a house. So for the first task, I'll type in foundation, phase. In that phase, I need to dig the foundation. We need to build a frame. We then need to pour concrete. We then need the concrete to dry. And after it dries, the foundation phase is complete. You'll notice I'm not filling out the duration. All I do is I sit and I brainstorm. The reason for the question mark of 1 day, it means that it's an estimate. When you fill out a task name, it fills out a default duration of 1 day and marks it as an estimate. But you can use that question mark for any type of duration, and it always means estimate. When you do your reports, in brackets, it will say estimate. After the foundation phase, it's going to be the flooring phase. For the flooring phase, we need to lay flooring. And we also need to lay tiles, lay carpet, and then flooring. The flooring phase will be complete. Now say that you forgot a particular task. For instance, before we lay the flooring, I'd like to build a frame for the flooring to sit on. This is the only time this key works on your keyboard. It doesn't work for any other program, really. It does different things in other programs. But in Project, you have an insert key. It sits usually in the upper right-hand side of your keyboard, and it's usually grouped within a grouping of 6. You've got Insert, Delete, Home, Page Up, and Page Down, and you also have a button called End. Well, if you hit Insert on your keyboard, it's the only time this actually works. It inserts a row. Not a bad feature. Kind of wished it worked like this way for Excel, too. But now, I can build a frame. Underneath the flooring phase, we're going to have walls. So this will be called the wall face. We'll build a frame. After we build the frame, we'll install studs. After that, we'll install drywall. After that, we will paint the walls. And after that, walls phase complete. Obviously, this is not the order of operations. So what I've done is I've created these different phases, and then we're going to link between the phases to actually build the house and create our order of operations. Underneath the wall face, it's going to be roofing. For the roofing phase, I have to build a frame. After I build the frame, we'll install studs. And after we do that, we'll install tiles. And after that, the roofing phase is complete. Now I have another phase, electrical. For the electric phase, we have to install wire. We install fixtures. We'll install a fuse box. And then we'll connect the fuse box. After that, electrical. That phase is complete. Last phase, plumbing. If I can get my fingers to work. Plumbing phase. We'll install pipes. We'll install fixtures. We'll connect the mains. And then plumbing is complete. So I brainstorm. I think of all the different things that I have to do. Obviously, it's usually not just myself, it's also usually my team as well. The next thing that I usually do is I run through and fill out all the durations. Don't worry about totals or anything like that yet. That'll quickly all happen within a few minutes. So for dig the foundation, it takes 2 weeks. You can put in lots of different types of durations. 2W, 2D, 2D for a day, W for a week, H for an hour, MIN for a minute, MON for a month. You've got lots of different types of durations. I'll show you a few of them. This one's 2 weeks. On the right-hand side is a graphical representation of the project's timeline. Unfortunately, with certain projects, they get pretty big, and it gets a little bit difficult to constantly navigate and scroll back and forth trying to find certain timelines. So instead, on your task tab, towards the end, is scroll to task. This way, you can click on a task, click on scroll to task, and it takes you to where exactly that task is being executed. Next duration. Building the frame, it's going to take us another 2 weeks. Pouring concrete, it's only going to take us 3 hours. Drying the concrete. Well, drying the concrete is going to take 72 hours. So I put in 72, H for hours. My foundation phase complete, that's a milestone. To mark milestones, you mark them as 0D. That changes the blue bar to a diamond and gives you a date of when the phase is complete. Right now, none of the dates make a lot of sense, and that's because there's no relations. They're all thinking that they're starting at exactly the same time. The flooring phase is a title, so I'll skip that, and I'll head to building the frame. Building the frame for the floor takes 5 days. Laying the flooring is going to take us 2 days, or 2D. Laying the tiles is also going to take 2 days, so I'll put in 2D. Laying carpet should take us a day. And then the flooring phase is complete. Now once again, this is not the order that I want to do this in. I'm going to change the order. Wall phase is a title, so I'll skip that. And for the wall phase, it takes us 1 week to build the frame. To install the studs, That's going to take us 2D or 2 days. Installing the drywall also takes 2 days. To paint the walls, that takes a day. Once we paint the walls, the wall phase is complete, so I'll mark it as a 0-day duration. Roofing phase, that's another title. I'll skip the roofing phase and head to building the frame. Building the frame for the roof is going to take us 4D or 4 days. Installing the studs is going to take us a day. And installing tiles is going to take us half a day or 0.5D. I also could have put in the number of hours as well. The roofing phase complete, that's a milestone, so that's a 0-day duration. For the electrical phase, I want to install wire, so that will take us 1 week. Installing the fixtures should take us 2D or 2 days. Installing that fuse box should only take us 2 hours. Connecting the fuse box, though, should take us 3 hours. Once we do all that, the electrical phase is complete, so I'll mark it with a 0D duration. That makes it a milestone. Last phase, the plumbing phase. To install the pipes, that takes us 2 weeks. Installing the fixtures, that should take us 2 days. Connecting the mains doesn't take long. It takes 3 hours, and after that, plumbing is complete, and that's a 0-day duration. The next thing that I want to do is I want to create relationships, and I want to outline it. First, I'll outline it. Outlining is when you use the indentation that's here. You can indent up to 9 different levels. I'm just going to use 1. If you highlight from 2 to 6, once you highlight from 2 to 6, you can indent that, and what that does is it tucks it up underneath the foundation phase title and truly makes it a title. Now I can collapse it, or I can open it up. So if the foundation phase is complete, I don't have to sit there staring at this stuff. I can just fold it up. Or if we're not talking about it, we're not interested in it. The total duration doesn't really show you the total duration. It's telling you that the longest duration is 10 days, right? 2 weeks, 10 days, 5 days a week. Next is flooring. For flooring, I'll highlight from 8 to 12, and I'll indent it. Walls is next. For walls, I'll highlight from 14 to 18, and I'll indent it. Roofing is next, and roofing I'll highlight from 20 to 23 and indent that as well. For electrical wire, I'll highlight from 25 to 28, from 25 to 29, and I'll indent it. Plumbing is no different. I'll highlight the rest of the tasks and indent them. The next thing that you want to do is create relationships. There's multiple ways of creating the relationships. You should try and link everything throughout the project. Don't think of it as real dependencies. Think of it as an order of operations. This is the order that I would like things to be completed by. You'll also notice I haven't touched any of these dates. You're not supposed to. The moment that you touch either one of these dates, it sets unreal constraints within the project. You then start to get messages like this task can't move before this task. The moment you start to get those types of messages, you know that you've probably set some constraints that aren't real constraints. One of the problems we have as project management is we know when things have to happen and when things are going to be late and when they need to get started. The reason you're using this program is you're letting the program tell you when you should be starting, when you should be finishing. If you don't let the program do that, it's not doing its job. So, unless it's a real constraint, you never touch these dates. Building a frame, line 3. If I double-click on Build Frame, when I double-click on Build Frame, I can take a look at its predecessor and create a relationship. Its predecessor is Dig Foundation. You'll notice, though, puts everything alphabetical. And that creates a problem. The reason that I had multiple tasks have the same name was to show this to you. Here I've got build frame 3 times. Install fixtures is twice. Studs. It creates some pretty serious confusion. So, lesson learned, you should have unique names for every single task. Although, we know this one is Dig Foundation. So I click on Dig Foundation. There's multiple types of relationships that you can work with. Finish to start, start to finish to finish, start to finish. The way that I work with them, I read them like sentences. So I always read them this way. You have to wait for Dig Foundation to finish in order to start building the frame. If that sounds like a logical relationship, then you can create that relationship. Here I've got a start to start. I have to wait for Dig Foundation to start in order to start building the frame. In other words, both of these would start at exactly the same time, regardless of the durations. Finish to finish. I have to wait for Dig Foundation to finish in order to finish building the frame. Again, there's different tasks that actually rely on other tasks to mark themselves as finished. And the last one, this one's a start to finish. You have to wait for Dig Foundation to start in order to finish building your frame. It's the first one that I want. Finish to start, that's a default relationship. Also, you have another one, another column here that's called lag. I'll show you how lag works in a few minutes. But lag, you can use it a few different ways. Lag is distance in between 2 tasks. If you put lag in as negative, it becomes lead. So this way, the 2 tasks overlap each other. Let me click OK. That creates my relationship and pushes out Dig Foundation. Now, as long as you don't have any crazy relationships, finish to finish, start to start, you can actually use a button up top. This creates the default relationship, finish to finish. So I can highlight, build frame, pour concrete, dry the concrete, and foundation complete, use my link button, and link them all together. You never link a task with a title. So I can click on a task, hold my control key down to skip this line, and click on Build Frame in the flooring phase. Now this phase will be connected to the next phase. When I click my link button, it pushes my foundation phase even further back. Any questions so far? All right. I've got a question from Danielle. In terms of working time, is it possible that someone may work after hours, i.e. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.? Does that mean that the project work time should factor in possible regular working hours? Yes. So basically, yeah, if you're expecting that people are going to work overtime or it could go past a default working time, yes, absolutely. You're going to have to extend your project work hours to include all different types of schedules. That way, if work could happen at midnight and your project goes to midnight, then it can factor that in. They can actually work at midnight. If the project stops, though, at 5 p.m. and you have something scheduled for midnight, it will never, ever, ever happen. You're going to have to extend your work hours. And yes, the insert key, like I was saying, this is the only time the insert key actually inserts a row. The other time, you're right, it just does overtyping of characters in Word. It's not used in Excel, so there's different programs where they don't use it at all. But yeah, this is the only time that this actually inserts a row. So a lot of time people do expect it to insert something, and this time it actually does. All the other times, it doesn't do exactly what you'd think it would do. Any other questions? For stat holidays, you're going to manually have to put that in. So what I would have to do, sorry, the question was in the work hours section, how do we account for stat holidays? For stat holidays, when you change your working time, that's going to have to be an exception day. There is a non-default work week, so if it's not part of the work week, but it is going to be working hours, then these would be extended hours. So the yellow that you see would be weeks that we've decided that we're going to work extra long that week to get us back on track, or whatever reason we've decided to work longer hours. Any other questions? All right, let's keep going. Oh, stat holidays. In terms of stat holidays, is there a way to export, import these items into another project? Not at all. This does not talk in any way, shape, or form to Outlook. You can import your tasks from your task list in here, but that's it. I can't import calendars. I can't use a text file to populate the calendar at all. All of this is very, very manual. If you do want a lot of automatic things to happen, then you may want to take a look at the product Microsoft Project, the server version. And the server version does talk to Outlook, does allow you to import stat holidays and all kinds of really neat things. All right. I want to link the rest of this project up. So, my flooring phase. I want to build the frame, lay the flooring, but I don't want to lay the tiles. I don't want to lay the tiles and the carpet. So I'm just going to highlight these two, head to my Task tab, and link them together. To skip tasks, you use your Control key. So I click on Lay Flooring, hold my Control key down, and click on Build Frame in the wall phase. All I have to do is click my Link button, and after they lay the flooring, they'll start to build the frame. They might as well start installing the studs as well, so I'll highlight these two, 14 and 16, and link them together. I'll click on Install Studs because after they install the studs for the walls, they might as well start building the frame for the roof. I'll link the two together. The roofing phase is pretty straightforward. Once they start building the frame, they can put the studs in, install the tiles, and then the roofing phase is complete. So I'll link all that together. With that linked together, I can now take a look at my electrical phase. With my electrical phase, I want to use the electrical phase, or I want them to start the electrical phase once they stop installing those studs. So I'm going to click on line 15, hold my Control key down, and click on line 25, which is installing the wire. I click my Link button and link the two together. Once they install the wire, they can do the fixtures, the fuse box, connect it, and then electrical is complete. So I'll link all of that together. Now once they start or finish installing the studs for the walls, we can also start installing the pipe for the plumbing. So it's possible to create more than one relationship. It's just that the task is going to honor the first relationship first, and then it will honor the next relationship. So if there's a conflict, it's going to pay attention to your first relationship first and try and honor that before it tries to honor the second relationship. If I click on line 15, I'll hold my Control key down, click on Install Pipes. I'll link those two together. Perfect. Plumbing's straightforward. It's one after the other. Install the fixtures, connect the mains, and then you're finished. So I'll link all that stuff together. Now once they're finished the pipes, and once they're finished electrical, we can start installing the drywall and painting the walls. To make sure that they don't install the drywall before electrical is complete or before plumbing is complete, I'll create two relationships with installing the drywall. Plumbing takes the longest, so I'll hold my Control key down and I'll first create a relationship with plumbing and installing the drywall. With Project, it actually matters the order that you click. So by me selecting something down here, holding my control key and selecting something up here. When I link it, you'll notice that your arrow key goes up. Same with electrical. I can click on Electrical Complete, hold my control key down. I can link it with Install Drywall and link the two together. Now I have a relationship with Install Drywall and Electrical Complete, and I have a relationship with the plumbing being complete and installing drywall. The rest of the wall face, straightforward. Install the drywall, paint the walls. Walls are complete. I can link it up. Next is my tiles, my carpeting. Well, once the walls are done, then they can lay the tile. So I'll link that together, and once they lay the tile, they can lay the carpet, and then the flooring phase will be complete. I'll link all that together, and now my entire project is linked up. I'm not happy with the timeline of anything, so there's a few things that I'm not happy about. For instance, plumbing. Plumbing's not bad, but electrical, they're waiting until the last minute to do electrical. Well, in that case, I'm going to have to double-click on Install Wire. What I'm doing is I'm changing the type of constraint that has been set. When you double-click on a task, it opens up task information. Inside task information, you have a tab called Advanced. In the Advanced tab is where I can change the constraint type from as late as possible to as soon as possible. Now that it's as soon as possible, I can click OK, and it bumps it up. If I have to do this to multiple tasks, I may want to insert a column. If I right-click right on top of duration, you can insert a column. The column that I want to insert is Constraint Type, so it's all alphabetical, and I'll head to Constraint Type. So I can see what's as late as possible and what's as soon as possible. I need to make this as soon as possible. Same with this one, same with this one, and same with this one. To deal with multiple situations like this, I can click on one, hold my Shift key down, click on the last one. I can then right-click and choose Information. This allows me to change different things en masse. I can't change everything en masse, but there are quite a few things that I can change. Predecessors, notes, and custom fields can't be changed, but if I head to Advanced, I can definitely change their constraint type to as soon as possible. Now that means I've got to move other stuff up too. Like my roofing. My roofing is done as late as possible. Well, I can move that up to as soon as possible. If you know how to use your autofill handle in Excel, the autofill handle is also found in this program too. Your autofill handle allows you to take a property and copy it down. So I can take as soon as possible and copy it all the way down using the autofill handle. To see the autofill handle, you move your mouse pointer over top of that little box in the bottom right-hand side. You'll notice there's a tiny, tiny little box that sits there, and when you move your mouse pointer over it, it changes to a thin crosshair. Drywall, that's another one. I want that to happen as soon as possible. Painting the walls as soon as possible. And the wall face complete, well, that's done as soon as possible as well. You get the planning wizard that comes up. I'll be honest, every time I see the planning wizard, I close it. I completely ignore it. If it ever tells you that certain tasks can't be moved before other tasks, close it. Get it to show you the problem. You're the project manager, so it's up to you to figure out a solution. Tiles, I can switch that to as soon as possible, see if there's any time available. this one as soon as possible, and of course my milestone can be done as soon as possible, and it moves everything up just slightly. There's another little issue that I have. And that's with drying concrete. You'll notice that dry concrete is not taking 72 hours. Based on our schedule, it's taking 72 hours, 8 hours a day. That's why it takes as long as it does. So to change this, there's another type of duration that you can use. It's called 72 EH. That stands for elapsed hours. With it being elapsed, it runs from a 24-hour clock, and as you can tell, it takes up a lot less space. Makes sense. It continues to dry through the weekend. Eventually, it's finished on the Monday. I don't need the constraint type anymore, so I can right-click on top of the column and hide it. It does not hide the column. Hiding the column means that you could unhide the column. Well, you cannot unhide a column. There is no such thing. Instead, what it does is it removes the column from the view. You do not lose the information. It only removes it from the view. So if I click on Hide Column, it removes it from the view. And now I'm back to my default view. The predecessors is an excellent way of just kind of doing a bit of a gut check to make sure that all the relationships are correct. As long as I'm happy with all the relationships, I can start to tweak the project, move things, change things, and start adding my resources. Another thing, just to show you, if we're actually doing these tasks, they're really not going to wait until everybody is completely finished digging the foundation in order to jump in and build the frame. More than likely, we're going to jump in at about 80% completion. So, once they're 80% finished digging the foundation, it's possible that there's enough room in that hole for us to jump down and start building the frame for the concrete. So, in order to show that two tasks are overlapping, I can double-click on Build Frame, head to my Predecessor tab, and I can put in some lag time, except I throw it in as negative. It could be negative an hour, 2 hours. Instead, I want to do mine on a percentage. So I put in negative 20%. So when there is 20% work left for digging the foundation, I want you to jump in and start building the frame. When I click OK, this causes overlap and also saves us time. I now go through, I take a look at every single task and figure out whether I need to put in lag time or lead time. For drying the concrete, I may want to put in some lag time before we actually mark it as complete. We may still need to give it 24 hours just to cure. In that case, I can double-click on Foundation Phase Complete, put the lag time on its predecessor, which is dry concrete. I could put in a 24 elapsed hour lag time. When I click OK, there's now room in between these two tasks. So, from when it actually finishes to when it is finished, there should be 24 hours elapsed time between the two. So that, in a nutshell, is how you set your project up. Keep in mind all new tasks are auto-scheduled. The next thing that you want to do is head to your project task and change your project information as well as your working time. Whatever you do after you do all that stuff, it really doesn't matter. But you have to do those first steps or else you're going to be fighting project all the way through. Every time you create relationships or need to move things, you're going to start to get error messages. The other thing that you've noticed, I haven't touched a date yet. We're going to be finished on time. I also know when we have to start, but I haven't touched a single date. The moment that I start to see calendars show up in this information area, I start to suspect that somebody's been playing with these dates and they may not actually know how to use project correctly. So next time you open a project, look for calendars on the left-hand side. If you see quite a few, you know that they've manually entered in the dates, and those constraints are going to cause you real headaches all throughout the project. Any questions at all? Jennifer has a question. Are you able to track actual work under each task as it happens? Absolutely. We don't track it here. Instead, I've got to switch views and head to my tracking Gantt. In my tracking Gantt is where I can take a look at percentage complete, physical percent, my cost, and then finally my actual work. This also shows up in another view that's called resource usage. In resource usage, you see the amount of work that's involved with each task, and you'll also see the amount of work that each resource is doing. Dry concrete. Dry concrete starts exactly after pour concrete. It appears to start the next day and not that day. Let's take a look. Let me switch views. I'll head back to my Gantt. So I'm pouring my concrete on Thursday, and it doesn't actually start to dry until it appears to be Friday. This is a scheduling issue with that particular task. So what I'm going to have to do is I'll either have to extend the workday, or I may need to create a specific calendar for dry concrete. More than likely, though, I just have to extend the workday, maybe an hour or two, in order for it to actually happen when I need it to. I just want to check one other thing, get this done as soon as possible, and that fixes the problem too. So now it actually starts on the Thursday. If I take a look at the time, right, the time should be exact as well. So yeah, we finish at 3, then we start at 3. Perfect. How would you remove a calendar from appearing in the info section? So if somebody has monkeyed around with one of these dates, so if they got in here and they said, yeah, we're actually going to start at 3:10, a date appears on the left-hand side. To remove that date, I have to double-click on dry concrete or whatever tasks that they've done that to. And I've got to change the constraint type. See, here it thinks that it can't start any later than 3:10. I just have to change it to as soon as possible. That's what I had set it at before in order to get that 3 o'clock. When I click OK, fixes my situation, gets rid of that calendar, and everything's happening just like it's supposed to happen. Any other questions at all? No, we're just covering starting the project, so we're not getting into resources and assigning and all that stuff. That's actually working with the project. Yeah, as far as just setting up your resources, you know, you type in the different resources. There's really no idiosyncrasies with all that stuff. It is what it is. It's a list of your resources. So you know, you type them out, and that's it. Each resource gets their own calendar, which is kind of cool. So much like how we change the work time for the project, you can then change work times for resources as well. Any other questions? Is there difference between the client-only resources and if there is a project server? I'm not sure what you're asking. These are two different products. Microsoft Project and Project Server are two very, very different products. There's a whole other component when you're working with Server. There's a lot of different things that that you've got to play with.
What do you do to
How resourcing works in client only versus Project Server. as far as the resources go, resources actually get their own page. So they use a web browser to log in. They can fill out their timesheets. They can fill in any questions that they have and send them to the project manager. There's all kinds of different things that can be offered through Project Server to the actual resources. That way, whenever a resource is finished a certain task, they just log in, put in their time, any issues that they had, they can enter that in as well. And it basically works like a portal. As far as setting them up, it's basically the same. Yes, you can add comments to tasks. Comments to tasks, if you double-click on the task, is found in Notes. So if you click on the Notes tab, that's where you're going to find any comments that you've made. Any other questions? Yes. Much like every single Microsoft product that's out there, you go to File. Oh, sorry, the question. Is there a way to export project information into other formats when completed? Yes. Just like every other Microsoft product, if you want to save it as another format, you go to File, you go to Save As, and pick the format. Any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Lutz, Greg Lutz, thank you very much for the presentation. On behalf of CPC Train Canada, you did a great job. Hopefully everybody learned a lot about Project. Just wanted to tell you at traincanada.com, you can go there to go on the Events tab to find out about other events. As well as you can get access to this recording. It's going to be put up there later today. Or if you wanted to check out any other upcoming events, just go to the traincanada.com site. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the next presentation. Have a great day and have a great weekend.